Alright, today we're going to get started welding these 9-inch ends on this Ford 8.8 differential. I've got some other videos on this, on the tear down and cutting the ends off and so on, but what happened is this 8.8 was given to me. It's off a 2000 Ford Explorer, and my original intention was just to cut the long side down and use 2 short axles. Then as I got into studying on it, I found out that C-clips are not allowed on the drag strip if you're running slicks, which I hope to do. So I decided to cut the 8.8 inch ends off and put Ford 9-inch ends on. If I had it to do over again, I would just try to get a Ford 9-inch rear end from the get-go, but since I had this 8.8 and it was free, I went ahead and cut both ends. I'm going to weld the 9-inch ends on, get some axles from either Mosier or Strange. I already have the center components. Just trying to get that as clean as possible inside and out. I can't get it too clean inside, but the outside I believe is more important. So now I've got to clean up the other end, and then we'll be ready to start putting the jig together. Okay, I'm starting to set up the jig to weld these 9-inch ends onto my Ford 8.8 housing. But I want to go over some of the cost just so you have an idea. The first thing is the 1¼ steel bar that runs all the way through. That was about $140. I got that from onlinemetals.com. With taxes and shipping, it ended up being about $180 for that 1¼ steel bar to run all the way through the diff. I know some people just use pieces of angle iron or C-channel to try to line the ends up with the tube and weld them on, but my understanding is that's just asking to burn up bearings, and I don't like to have issues or have to redo something. I like to do it one time and be done with it. So I went ahead and I bit the bullet, and I bought the 1¼ inch steel bar to run all the way through. The 9-inch Ford Torino ends, these are what they call the big Ford Torino ends. Those were about $100 from Mosier Engineering. With taxes and shipping, they came to about $120. As far as the bushings, I originally bought the bushing for a Ford 8.8, so it comes with the carrier bearing bushings, for your center section, and also the outer bushings for the 8.8 ends. Now all these bushings have 2 different sizes on them, so they can be used for multiple things. Probably just by measuring these you could figure out what the other end is. But it came with 4 bushings for inside your center section, the bushings for the 8.8 ends, and then the lock collars for the 1¼ bar. So that Ford 8.8 kit was $140 approximately delivered, and those came from Lead Mine Products on eBay. So $140 for the 4 bushings and the lock collars. You do have to buy the bar separate. They don't offer that. Once I decided to cut both ends off and put the Ford 9-inch on, I had to go back to Lead Mine Products on eBay and buy the 9-inch Ford bushings. Those were about $65 delivered. But one other thing, I got from Lead Mine Products was this, they call it a rear end ruler for the Ford 8.8. And what this does is it bolts onto the back here, and it's got these different slots for you to hook your tape measure in to measure. You have a slot here for your center line of your differential. You have a slot here for your driver's side axle, your passenger side axle, and your pinion center line. Once I get everything bolted up, I will put this on and I will double check my dimensions before I ever start welding to make sure I've got everything exactly where I want it. Here's a close-up of the rear end ruler that came from Lead Mine Products on eBay. It was approximately $60 delivered. Now all these prices are probably from 2020. I ordered them and they have been sitting for a while. I'm just now getting to where I'm going to be using them. So prices may very well be higher now, especially shipping cost. Another thing to note, when that bar came, it came in a cardboard tube, and I just had it standing up in the corner of the garage. When I took it out, the bar had some surface rust, so I had to do some sanding just to get that surface rust off. So if you do get one and you're not going to be using it right away, I strongly suggest you take it out and maybe coat it with some WD-40 or some oil or something. Here's a view of the bushings inside. This is my Mosier 9-inch end. They call that the big Torino end. This is the 9-inch bushing. It goes inside that end, and then we've got our lock collar. Okay, I've got this all put together and I'm ready to finally start welding. I've spent the last 2 hours doubting myself and double checking all the dimensions, thinking that I messed up, but once I got through it and figure out what I was doing, it is exactly where I intended it to be. This is such a confusing process. I started by measuring the differential that came out of the Nova and getting the dimension from the outside, or from the center line of the pinion to the outside of the drum brakes, and then trying to compare that to the center line of the pinion on this Ford 8.8 inch to the outside of what will be disc brakes. And again, I wanted to get the tires centered in the wheel well. So I have my center caps in over the bushings. Those are torqued down. They torque to 80 foot-pounds. I ratchet strapped it down to the sawhorse to kind of hold it in place so that it wouldn't move as easy. I used a magnetic angle finder to get it set up as flat as I could. I couldn't get it perfectly even in all four corners, but it is darn close. And then I also used the same angle finder on these ends. It doesn't have a flat space to actually put it on, so actually what I ended up doing is putting the angle finder on one side and then the other and adjusting it until I got it equal, and I have it the same at both ends. So I'm actually ready to start welding as soon as I get the welder set up. I say it on my channel all the time, this is not a how-to channel. This is how I'm doing it. And I guess I do it this way and tell everyone so you guys can tell me what I'm doing wrong. I'm using ER70S6 rod. I'm welding at I'm using pulse and welding with a pulse of about 150 amps. Just trying to get a tack weld on there to start with. Well, it's been a few weeks since I last worked on this. It seems like I have nothing but interruptions when I try to work on this, but I'm finally done with my welding. I think I'm going to finish cleaning this up and get it painted and then start assembling the center section. But in the last clip I showed some of my welds when I started, and you probably saw some porosity on the bottom side of this end. What I did is I took a die grinder with this little cone-shaped burr and went around that and dug all that porosity out back down to good metal. I made 3 complete passes, TIG welding, the root pass, and then like 2 cap passes. And then you probably saw on one of the videos there was a little shoulder on the 9-inch end right here. I got in my mind, I thought it would be a lot stronger if I kind of built this up and tapered it down across. So I'm going to say my 9-inch end, the main weld, was probably in here, and that shoulder was back here. And so what I did is I switched to the MIG welder and started running some passes this direction from that shoulder down, trying to build this taper in. And I kind of wish I hadn't done that. That turned out to be a lot of work. But once you started, you're kind of committed. It took me a long time, but I did finally get through it. Whenever I had any trouble with porosity, like I said, I would grind it out with either the die grinder or a flapper wheel. And then I have this, they call it a pipe sander, and I used it to kind of finish things off, and it'll wrap around the outside, and that helps to keep it round without ending up with flat spots. I did, Tried to be very careful with both the welding and with the flapper wheel on the angle grinder to make sure I didn't have high spots or low spots, but this really helped. One piece of advice I have for anybody that decides they want to do this is to make sure you have plenty of flapper wheels and sand if you're using the pipe sander, sanding belts, because that weld is hard and you go through those pretty quick. The other thing I did when I was welding, every time I welded, and I would weld one side, flip it over, 180, and do the other side and let it cool. But I also got really in the habit of turning this every time I welded to make sure that there was no binding. I was really worried about the heat pulling things, and so I would turn this to make sure there was no binding. I'm still trying to decide whether I want to put a drain plug in here or not. If you've got any opinions on that, I would like to hear them. I don't understand why differentials don't come with drain plugs to make it easier to change the fluid and so on. So I do have a drain plug I bought, and I was thinking about putting it on a piece of cold roll steel and then welding that to here and drilling the hole through the cast so as to not to weaken the cast. But like I said, if you've got an opinion on that. I'm also trying to decide whether I'm going to weld these tubes here to the cast where they meet. But we've got the ends on, and get the center section assembled, and then hopefully get some axles on. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. God bless.